But first, I want to talk about Pete Carroll being hired by the Raiders. We did a video talking about, the hire a little bit, but today he and John Spytek had a press conference, and we want to talk about how good of a press conference it was. Mike, I will let you have the floor. You're the Raider fan here, and you're already smiling, dude. How did you like it? And what are your immediate thoughts?
Now we can take a nice breath away from the Chiefs in the Super Bowl and the playoffs and the Bills game and actually focus on something very nice and refreshing. Finally, this team is being led by adults, and at the very least, being led by people who know what they're doing. And it's clear and obvious day one, even before, when they hired these guys a couple of days ago. It's just clear and obvious. The press conference, obviously, it's the usual thing where it starts with Mark Davis. He introduces them. They come in. It was just like Ziegler and Josh McDaniels a couple years ago, and then Antonio Pierce and Telesco. And now this. And, okay, first off, after that, they get a little photo op. They sit down. And then Spytek goes first. He brings out a piece of paper and, he opens with his own opening statement. And the dude went on for what might have been 10 minutes. It kind of felt like it. Yeah. But, even though he wasn't even really talking football, he just came off so professional and confident that I was already like, I love this guy.
Yep.
Like this dude is a stud. And then of course it got turned over to Pete Carroll. No notes, nothing. Just, basically just talking. And everything he was saying, man. I mean, both of them. I was just so impressed. But I'll get into it. I did send a couple of tweets on the Silver and Gold Twitter account. If you could pull those up now, there are a couple of videos. Let me make sure.
Real quick, I do want to say before we move on, like when Spytek was speaking, I was very impressed with him, and then like he started he was very, I guess, humble, and which I really liked, and at the same time, he named off so many names and teams that he's been with. It was almost like I know he didn't mean it in a bragging way, but it was like a very, very humble I've had this experience with this team. This helped me grow in this way. I worked with John Elway. I want to thank this person and this person, and I even think his old high school coach was there, and so I think that when you leave a good impression on people and you're genuinely a good person, I think good things happen to you. And it makes me happy that a guy like that is getting, an opportunity. And it also is good because he has a lot of experience with a lot of personnel. So he already has the connections of hey man, I know the Raiders aren't going to trade much with the Broncos, but I mean, he has John Elway's number.
Mm-hmm.
He's got, connections to him. He's got connections to the Buccaneers if they want to make trades. He's got, now paired with Pete Carroll, they've got connections to the Seahawks. I feel like genuinely good on the general manager front. And then Pete Carroll, man, when Pete Carroll started speaking, I was like, you know what? Yeah. The Raiders didn't just make the right hire for who was available. I think they probably made the best hire, period, out of everybody. I immediately was like, you know what? Fuck Ben Johnson. Forget Ben Johnson. I think this is the guy. Yeah. And what's good about Pete Carroll being hired is that the Raiders have had to fire coaches over and over for incompetence, and I guess John Gruden didn't necessarily get fired for incompetence, and really Jack Del Rio was kind of let go because they just preferred Gruden over him. But
Right.
but McDaniels got fired for being incompetent. Antonio Pierce got fired for being inexperienced and they unable to fix the run game or really progress from the season before. That is not going to be a problem with Pete Carroll. He is so knowledgeable. The Raiders are not going to have to fire another head coach due to just low understanding of the game. He might even understand the game at higher levels than probably 99% of the league. I was thoroughly impressed, but let me start pulling up the tweets that you sent. Do I start at the top?
No, because I resent the ones that I want you to send or show more at the bottom. First, okay, to your point on the coaches, before you pull anything up.
Yeah.
To your point, I feel the exact same way about the GM. And bear in mind, this guy has never been a GM for a team, whereas like a guy like Tom Telesco was. But comparing Spytek to Ziegler and Tom Telesco, just from this press conference, and this doesn't mean anything as far as how he's going to be in his career as a GM for the Raiders, but in comparing them as people, Spytek is way more confident. He seems way more confident, and he seems a bit more professional too. Like I remember Ziegler kind of tripping over his words at times, and Telesco just doesn't seem very outgoing. It's something like that, in my opinion. And then just to bring it all the way around, the other guy to mention would be Mike Mayock, who never had any fucking experience in a front office. And in hindsight, it's just like, why the fuck did they do that? Like, yeah, he's a draft guru, but like, dude, you're running the operations. What are we thinking? Right? Mm-hmm. Spytek has been around this for 20 years. Right? He's gone up the ladder for 20 years, and especially the past 6 to 10 years, he's really been up there, right? He knows what it takes, and he's a well-respected talent evaluator.
FBA G code says just Spytek talking. He brought about a confidence we haven't had, and that GM and Pete Carroll, had the same vibe.
Yep. And I know, Mark Davis said that Tom Brady really was swinging the bat for Spytek in this process, and then Pete Carroll, I think, just became the clear candidate to them over the course of the head coaching process. Before we get into some videos from the Raiders press conference, I want to do 2 videos from 2 other teams, from the ones that I sent you on Twitter. First, let's do the Cowboys one.
Okay. And then before we get into videos of the Raiders press conference, I want to talk about the stuff that really stood out. Unless you had you wanted to provide a visual aid, but there were clear things that stood out to me in this press conference that Pete Carroll mentioned that I was heavily impressed with, and then we can go from there.
I took some pretty good, in my opinion, notes. I was going to do the videos first because they're more funny, and then we'll get into the actual impressions. So let's do the Cowboys one. PFT
Cowboys
commenter.
Okay. Let's see here.
So first we're going to compare and contrast the feeling, the vibe, right?
Okay.
There's a very low percentage of this that is smiles and glory holes. Very low percent. There's a very low.
Dude, that paired with the whole Jamie Foxx live stream thing, it's
God.
Where is Jerry's head at nowadays, man?
And then maybe now is the time to bring up the Jaguars and really go on that, but let's do the Liam Cohen one right there. This is so cringy.
Duval.
Huh.
Duval.
Like, this is going on at other press conferences the same day, same hour as Pete Carroll and Spytek. And it's just
Yeah.
like, to me, polar opposites. Like, apparently the Schottenheimer press conference didn't go bad, but I know the overall thought process on that hire is like, really? Like, the Cowboys just went their own complete direction in the hiring process, and they went in-house after firing the head coach and like, oh, our team didn't do that good. Let's look in-house.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. Meanwhile, your ex-coordinators were in the NFC Championship for your opposing division, like in your division. Dan Quinn and Kellen Moore.
Yeah. So
It just
what
looks
I'll say
terrible.
about the Cowboys job is, all right, so you said that the press conference for Schottenheimer went well. The only problem with the Cowboys hire is just Jerry Jones does not know how to get out of his way. Like, they're not even, all right, first of all, hiring the offensive coordinator for the head coach that you just fired is already a bad look. But Jerry Jones is like talking about, oh yeah, it's really risky and he doesn't have experience and blah, blah, blah. Like, dude, what the hell are you even trying to do? Are you trying to get Cowboys fans to like freaking stop watching? Or are you invested in more TV companies? You want them to break more TVs with a baseball bat before the season even starts because they weren't in the playoffs this year to do that? I don't know. And then the Jaguars, dude, everything about that situation was like horrible. Like the sneakiness, and then like oh yeah, we were able to, or like, I guess they weren't boasting about it, but like it's widely regarded that they were so secretive about it so they could get that last minute Rooney Rule interview with Patrick Graham.
Graham.
Yeah.
Bro. Oh my God. I wanted to talk about it last pod, but I kind of forgot. Or no, maybe it hadn't happened yet on the last pod, but I knew that I wanted to talk about it on the podcast regardless. Yes, to your point. They had the interview lined up with Patrick Graham Thursday after having done one with somebody else to, suffice the Rooney Rule, right? So then Patrick Graham would be the second one.
Robert Saleh did one interview, I think.
I guess Saleh would be, because it'd be in person. He wasn't with the team, so yes. But Saleh had another interview on Friday lined up.
Yeah.
And they made the hire on Thursday. But they had the interview with Pat Graham on Thursday lined up. And then Wednesday, I believe, was the day, maybe even Tuesday, was the day that Cohen backed off. I'm out of here. And then that day or the next day, they fire the GM. And that's when it starts trickling of like Lee and Cohen, kind of doing, what? You fired him? Oh, well, in that case, after, it was said, he's going back to the Bucs on an extension. He's going to be the highest paid coordinator in the league, $4.5 million. Well, the other tricky or, sleazy thing that happened was part of the Jaguars fucking over, Pat Graham was also secretly saying, hey, Cohen, get back here. We'll do it, man. Maybe this was the Cohen aspect of like, he didn't want the deal with the Buccaneers to be off the table in case things fell through with the Jags. But the mentality was, it was announced, he's coming back to the Bucs, and the Bucs were ready for him to sign his contract on Thursday. And then he calls the head coach, hey, my kid is sick. And I'm actually, going to look into the Jags a little bit more, but, click. And then they're sitting there like, what's going on? Like, he was supposed to be here an hour ago. They can't talk to him. Like, they can't reach him, probably because he's in the building with the Jags trying to sign the contract. At some point in between that is when Pat Graham interviews, but they already have the intention of signing Cohen. Again, like we were talking about it last week or 2 weeks ago, like the Rooney Rule is just a joke. And this time, unfortunately, it's Pat Graham who gets the shit end of the stick. And frankly, like, I was listening to a podcast that was talking about it. I'm like, think about it more. Like, dude, I would not only be gutted if I were Pat Graham, because there were rumors that he was an actual like top 3 candidate for them. It was Cohen, Pat Graham, and Saleh. And then the rumor came out afterwards, like, oh, they actually had other interviews that they were going to line up too. Okay, sure. But like, not only would I be gutted if I were Pat Graham, I'd actually be kind of fucking embarrassed.
Yeah.
I'd be like, wow, they really like
They
brought
just
me
used
along,
me.
wasted my fucking time. They used me.
Yep.
They totally used me, and I got a little excited about it, only for them to slam the door right in my face. Oh yeah, the other guy that we actually want is actually in the building. Thank you for your time.
Yeah,
Good luck.
we'll get you next time, but definitely we'll call you first. No, dude, I don't get how this stuff can just happen like every single year, and like the NFL just decides that keeping the Rooney Rule is somehow less racist. Like I feel like it's more racist. What happened to Patrick Graham is more racist than not giving him an interview at all.
Yeah.
Because they just used him to satisfy the rule.
Yeah.
With no intention of hiring him, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't think they had any intention.
Right. The Bears did a similar thing, but not quite as it was pretty obvious. With the Titans' old running back. Apparently he's the head coach at like some small college school that I've never heard of. Like, let's just say it's like Mississippi State. Eddie George. The Bears interviewed Eddie George. Let's say it was Sunday. And then the next day, they're hiring Ben Johnson. And it was like, well, good thing they interviewed Eddie George, fucking Mississippi State head coach, who's never coached in the NFL, just to get the Rooney Rules, sufficed so that they could hire Ben Johnson before the Raiders get to talk to him. In theory.
It's humiliating. It's humiliating.
Yeah, like hopefully Eddie George had a fun time walking in the building.
Yeah.
Because that's yeah. Otherwise, it's just you're being used. Hopefully, you didn't have to pay for your plane ticket.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Liam Cohen, though, this isn't the only moment that was like very cringe in his press conference. Like there was this video of him where he turns around and like he's got all the media behind him. And what I don't understand, like, all right, he's like he says Duval like really loudly, but like they all like say it together. All right, is that media people behind him doing that? Like the media isn't supposed to be like for the team, you know what I mean? Like
I remember Antonio Pierce doing that once where he was like, can I get everybody in the room to just go Raiders? And they did. I've seen it, but I agree. It's kind of weird. It's kind of like, oh, you're being forced here,
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like, I feel like a serious journalist would not, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Like if you're just trying to objectively cover the team, like you shouldn't be on one side or the other.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, but I could see where if it were me and I was put into like I guess that social situation, like where it's like, hey, if none of us do it, it's going to be really awkward. Like, yeah, I could see where like I might just like say like I don't want to be that guy, but at the same time, it's like maybe the professional thing to do is just sit there,
right?
Because you're not like PR for the team,
yeah,
or you're not supposed to be.
Yeah. So with all that being said, these other teams had at least weird moments in their pressers. And the closest thing that I could say was a weird moment, but none of these moments were weird. Like this press conference for the Raiders was as close to perfect as it could be, I think, really. And it even had moments that were genuinely funny. And I don't know, it's not even because I'm so excited and optimistic, cautiously, but still optimistic about these hires. But I laughed my ass off twice during this press conference, and I sent you both videos. So they're going to be in order going downwards. Yeah.
I know one of them, that's for sure.
So the first one will be Raiders, top one, yep. and the next one will be right below it.
I know that we have a
Okay.
And for the
This
setup,
doesn't
for the
show.
setup,
Wait, what?
well, for the setup, Pete Carroll just started his, his his opening statement, right?
Yeah.
And he just got done thinking Mark Davis, this person, that person, whatever, and now he's speaking. Go ahead.
This better be the full clip.
with our guys. I know that we have a good draw for people from out of town. Hey, there you go. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, Mark, settle down a little bit.
Yeah.
Dude,
I love that.
It was perfect, man, because he had just gotten done like thanking Mark Davis and blah blah blah. Hey, Mark, settle down. Like, it was so, and it's like play it again. Watch how he goes from like happy giddy normal Pete Carroll to like just faking it, super like
with our guys. I know that we have a good draw for people from out of town. Hey, there you go. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, Mark, settle down a little bit.
Just the delivery is hella funny to me, dude.
Yeah, no, that moment was probably my favorite moment in the press conference, because it's like, all right, Pete Carroll is charming and endearing. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there is something like great about a head coach that has a sense of humor and isn't just always always super duper serious. Like Bill Walsh, one of the great stories of Bill Walsh when he was the Niners coach was before they played their first Super Bowl, he dressed up as one of the workers for like the bus company that they rode, like or maybe like the just like as a worker, and he was grabbing the luggage from the players. And then they were confused when they saw him dressed like that, and he was taking their luggages and like just to kind of like not be so serious about the game, not to be so tense about the game. Like, oh, our coach is still loose and relaxed. He's not like very stressed and everything. And I think there's something definitely like it's very satisfying when a coach is like not incredibly serious 24/7. He can have fun, and Pete Carroll talked about it in the press conference that it's supposed to be fun.
Yep. If it's not fun, he's not doing his job.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep. I'll get into all those for sure. The next tweet down. Oh, and just if anybody doesn't know, that was Marshawn Lynch that was yelling at us. When I first watched it, I was like, who let a fan in there? Like I wish I was that fan. No, it's Marshawn Lynch, of course.
Bro, what if it was Antonio Pierce in the back, like
hire me? No, but next tweet down that I sent you is the other video that genuinely made me laugh out loud. And this was just before this moment, actually, where Spytek was finishing his opening statements.
To this day, he's like 75 years old. He can't give it up and win state championships all the time. So, Coach, I hope you're out there watching somewhere. I love you. Thanks for.
Why are you looking at me?
Just the guy that loves football, just like you. A couple more here, then I'll turn it over to this guy.
Sorry, my bad.
He's still coaching to this day.
He's talking about his high school coach.
Yes. And it was just the perfect way for Pete Carroll, like without him even having to bring it up. Spytek did it for him. But it was the perfect way for him to almost react to everybody that's saying, no, he's too old.
Yep.
And Spytek is giving all these reasons, oh, he's 75, but he's still winning championships and blah, blah, blah. And he just glances over at Pete Carroll and just his humor. Why are you looking at me?
Yeah.
Like it was perfect. It was perfect. And I laughed my ass off.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, if there's a shot in there where it's the two of them, that could be our visual aid. And from here on out, I can go off my notes.
Uh-huh.
If there's a shot in there. Or if you have a photo or something.
Let me just pull this up right here. Open image in a new tab. Well, this is kind of small. Let me see. It's kind of blurry.
Yeah, I mean, you could zoom it out a little; it'll be fine.
Cool.
Yeah, that's fine. People know what they're looking at. Okay. So I'm just gonna go off my notes. You can stop me at any point. We could talk note by note, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
But I'm going mostly in order, but a little bit out of order. Okay. We already went over it, but Spytek was just super impressive. But mostly his opening statement was very much him thanking the people in his life, and him getting here and all of that. And it was very confident and impressive, right? So really getting on to Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll gave credit to Mark Davis for assembling a great ownership group to support Spytek and Carroll. He mentioned how valuable the ownership group of this franchise is, including having Tom Brady as part of it. When it comes to who has final say on roster decisions, Pete Carroll mentioned sharing the decision-making with John Spytek. Their relationship will be at the tip of the spear of this program. He said, "We are sharing everything. We are collaborating to the nth degree. We are partners in this." And just a note, like I watched the Pete Carroll opening press conference when he first was hired by the Seahawks in 2010. I watched it maybe almost a week ago, because it was, last Tuesday, I started really thinking like Pete Carroll has to be the guy. And I watched it, and there's a moment in that press conference, I recommend anybody that wants to watch it. He says about John Schneider, the GM, "I'm going to make John Schneider the best GM in the NFL by working together, and having a great working relationship and, competing." It was stuff like that. He said it, and he wasn't wrong. Like, he did that. Moving on. Carroll and Spytek both emphasized relationships, teamwork, competitiveness, and the love of the game of football when talking about what they're looking for this team and what they're striving for. Spytek mentioned that one of the requirements they'll look for in quarterbacks is elite competitiveness, Tom Brady being the model for this competitiveness and love of the game. And they intend to lean on Tom Brady for his insights in looking for their QB of the future, obviously.
I do want to stop there,
Yep.
because that was one of the things that really jumped out to me. And I guess it coincides with this comment perfectly. FBA says, "I respect Aiden O'Connell, but the way they talked, our starting quarterback isn't on the roster." And that's kind of what it seemed like to me, was that, they are going to prioritize building a team around a quarterback. And,
Yep.
they didn't name any of the quarterbacks on the roster, but it seemed like priority number one, or one of the top priorities, is going to be a quarterback, because Pete Carroll understands the importance of having a quarterback and, what that does for a football team and how to build around one. So I think, step one, he has already addressed one of the main issues, which I guess isn't like, it's not a secret that the Raiders need a quarterback, but it's just beyond me how, like last season, the Raiders didn't even draft a single quarterback,
Yeah.
or like in other regimes, there's an optimal spot, and they just don't take, they just don't take one. Like the Niners in 2017 did not take a quarterback when they needed one. They went with Brian Hoyer, right? And their plan was Kirk Cousins, right? There are people who understand, and there's people who don't understand. And one thing that jumped out to me was, in that, Pete Carroll talked about how his conversations with Bill Walsh in talking about quarterbacks. He mentioned Walsh. I'm assuming he was talking about Bill Walsh, and how I think it was around the part where he was talking about quarterbacks, that he learned so much from Walsh on I don't know if he said like how to evaluate them, but I'd say Bill Walsh found Steve Young and Joe Montana, and if Pete Carroll got knowledge from him, he might know a thing or two of what he's talking about. And that gives me confidence right there. That is the perfect place to at least get advice or look into how to evaluate quarterbacks. Bill Walsh is the perfect role model for the quarterback evaluation.
Yeah. And Tom Brady is the perfect model, I would say.
Yeah. And leaning on Tom Brady, right?
Yeah.
Leaning on Tom Brady, one of the best to ever do it, maybe even the best.
Yeah.
You know, him having an eye for quarterbacks. I mean, him being good at quarterback doesn't mean he'll have the best eye, but I'd say it would help. And what Pete Carroll said is that he wants to, forgot how he worded it, but he'll get some of his guys in here, but he'll also get new guys in here as well to learn. And then he also wants to retain some of the coaching staff for continuity. And continuity has been one of those things that you have been talking about for the longest for the Raiders, how you want continuity. That makes me think that he wants to keep Patrick Graham on this staff as well.
I'd like to think that at the bare minimum, there's already been reporting that they're talking to their defensive line coach for their defensive coordinator position. I forget his name, but I think I sent you the tweet, so we can look at it later. That'll be one of the last things on this topic. But I loved that statement when he said that. Like essentially for his coaching staff, what are you looking for? He wants guys that he's worked with before because obviously he knows that he can work well with them. He wants guys that he's never worked with before because, in essence, having never worked with somebody, I think for him gives this new layer, right? And you want people to be learning, right? At least that's something that he really looks for. Like I forget where I heard it, whether it was a podcast or one of his press conferences with the Seahawks, whether it was the intro or the outro. But, he is emphasized in his time as a coach learning how people learn, right?
Yeah.
Which is big because, like, I think some people are visual learners, some people are physical learners. Me personally, I'm a physical learner. Like, I gotta repeat, rinse and repeat. Do it over and over again to get good at something. I can't just see a picture and be like, okay, that's rare. But there are other people that can see pictures and take notes or, do homework. And that's just how homework would be for me, the repetitiveness, but by just taking notes, they learn. For me, no, I'm not going to remember shit like that. I got to do it, whereas other people, it's different. So, it's a very, in his coaching career, he's focused a lot on getting to know the person, and not just like, oh, here's my philosophy, learn it. It's like each individual has to do things in their own individual way and finding that within them, finding which way is best for them within them. I'll get back to that. Actually, it's my last point. That was my favorite thing in this press conference. But okay, as far as the coaching staff, yes, I love that he wants people that he's worked with. He wants new people, but he also wants people to be retained from this current or previous year because of that continuity. And I know on previous podcasts you mentioned it. I say continuity, and I thought about it more, and I was like, you know what? I think the reason why I do it, other than just not remembering what the proper way is to pronounce it, is because continuity takes a little less effort than continuity, right? It's like continuity, I have to really focus and almost slow it down, whereas continuity, it's just like it just rolls out. But anyways, continuity. He said it during his press conference, and I even was like, yep, there's that word. But it made me happy to hear that word because that's what I want, right? Stability, continuity, and obviously winning. So I like that, and it goes hand in hand with like having the assistant general manager. I'm forgetting his name, unfortunately, but having him around to help Spytek, Champ Kelly, thank you. Having him around to work with Spytek and really go in depth on the personnel coming in. That's huge. Same goes for the coaching staff, right? So I really like that a lot. And then you actually just started with saying this, but I'm just going to continue my notes. Pete Carroll emphasized surrounding the quarterback with a team that is built around the quarterback to support the QB in all aspects of the game, like the run game, obviously pass blocking, defense, special teams, everything, right? Surround the quarterback.
Yep.
John Spytek wants to build this thing the right way, and he wants to make Raider Nation proud. Obviously, I love to hear that. I got to see it, but so far I feel optimistic. Pete Carroll said that they intend to win immediately. He mentioned that it took his Seahawks a few years to be at the top in his last stint. So, one person I think estimated, let's just say it's a 2 to 3 year window that he sort of envisions, let's say, for getting back to where things need to be. And I know he in the press conference he mentioned like we're not looking at like 5 years. Like it's something sooner than that is what he envisions. But it's going to take a little bit of time to get there, which I understand, and it's just realistic, But he has proven in his past couple tenures that he can absolutely fucking do that. And that's the difference between him and all the other coaches they've ever hired in the past 20 years.
Yeah, and he's experienced in building programs, at all levels of football. And then another thing that stood out to me is his, I want to say they asked him if he had any Al Davis stories, but just the fact that he's been around that long to have have been in the NFL during, the really, I guess, a good portion of Al Davis's, career, or I guess ownership of the Raiders, however you really, want to remember it. I don't have a lot of recollections, so that's why I'm like, kind of stumbling here. But, just people are worried about his age, but I don't know how you can watch this press conference and be so worried when he's so young at like mentally, and then that brings me to my next point. What stood out is he talked about how having a year off has really helped him look at it from the outside. I think he's hungry, dude. Like he was kind of going in circles in Seattle a little bit, but really, I mean, even when he didn't have a winning season, he would get at least like 7 wins on the Seahawks. Yeah. And I mean, we talk about the AFC West being stacked. The NFC West used to be stacked too. So yeah. I mean, he's no stranger to coaching in a tough division. Like this literally could not have been a better hire for the Raiders, I think.
Yeah. I honestly agree.
He gives me that classic Raider vibe too, a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And he's from the Bay Area.
Yeah. Yeah. He had a line that was like, he grew up a Niner fan because of his dad, but the Raiders captured him at a young age too, or something like that. Which is cool.
Well, just, I mean, me being a Niner fan myself, like what I can say is watching this press conference reminded me of when I was young and I had to, narrow it down. Okay, one team I'm going to associate with. And then, part of me just, it made me happy a little bit because I'm like, all right, I could have, easily just, been a Raider fan. Well, not easily. Like that shit looks hard. I'm not going to lie. But I mean, I don't want the Raiders to be shitty because all my friends and family, they're all either Niner fans or Raider fans. Like, I don't want you guys to just, be bottom dwellers for like the rest of your life. Like, especially it sucks because, I mean, knowing you, Mike, I mean, your dad got to live through like good days of Raider football, and you have never been able to experience that. You know,
Yeah, the closest I got was ruined by a fibula.
growing up, like, you know, when I was in elementary school, like very early on in elementary school, it was like, man, you know, it's the Raiders, right? Now, when I think of the Raiders, it's like, you know, there was there was a moment in this press conference where they said this, and it stood out to me. It's, you know, the NFL is better when the Raiders are good, you know, something along those lines. And I have to agree, because, all right, when, you know, when I was in high school, the last time the Raiders were good was 2016 under Jack Del Rio, and they were so fun to watch. My Niners were dog shit that year. You know, they won like maybe 2 games that year, right? But it was still just fun to watch the Raiders win because of the way that they were doing it. And like they came on the scene and surprised everybody. You know?
Yeah.
I feel like this might be the most exciting hire, or the most exciting turn of events for the Raiders since Jack Del Rio. For me personally. Like, and I liked John Gruden, but, you know, I didn't feel like it was the right time to fire Del Rio when they did. I still hold true to that. And I like Gruden.
And also the Gruden hire like felt kind of out of the blue of like, wow, he's been out for 10 years, you know? Are we sure he's still going to be good? Because he didn't end any good with the Buccaneers, you know? And again, it's like, yeah, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it with Del Rio, you know? So that was a whole thing. But yeah, so now the rest of the quotes and stuff that I have is really in line with Pete Carroll's philosophy. And it's just stuff that I had already kind of heard before, but hearing it in this press conference, it was just so fucking refreshing to hear from a Raiders head coach. And I'm just fucking fired up about Pete Carroll, dude. Okay, so Pete Carroll said, "The culture is the players, and you will see that. But we will show them the way. The culture is competing. You're either competing or you're not. If you want to be a great team, you need to be a great teammate. Teaching what that's all about and instilling that into the makeup of our program is going to be crucial. That's where it starts. If we're not having fun, I'm screwing it up. If you don't want to compete, you're in the wrong place." And then this next one is the big one for me. When asked, after accomplishing everything he could accomplish in his career, what is it about this new challenge that interests him? Pete Carroll said, It's never been about accomplishments. It's been about the game. Loving it. I really have realized when you get a year to step away from it, it's incredibly valuable. The last time I did that, getting a year away, was between New England and USC, and the rest is history. It hasn't been about trying to win the championship games so that I could put the banner or ring in my drawer. It's not about that. It's about competing. It's about being the best you can possibly be with what you have to work with and taking on the challenges of it and all that goes into making that happen for the players. It's the relationships with the players. It's building the mentality that everybody that comes into our program has their unique quality that makes them them. And I'm going to try to figure out what that is and find a way to bring that to the surface. And in doing so, you give everybody the chance to be as good as they can possibly be. That's what this is about to me. It's not just about the rings. It's much more than that. Motherfucker, that's a coach. That is a fucking head coach. Remember when we had a conversation about the best coaches, they're teachers? Pete Carroll is literally a teacher.
I think he was actually a teacher at USC. I think maybe this past year. Right?
Yeah, he's actually, at least I saw a report that he's still going to be teaching this upcoming year.
Well, I don't know how he's going to balance that in his head coaching, you know,
Right. It's possible that he might do it remotely, but who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, that long quote really stuck with me, in part because it was a lot of stuff that I had already kind of recognized with his philosophy over the past couple weeks, and even a year ago when he seemingly was out of the league, not out of the league, but not the Seahawks head coach anymore. I had the final press conference, and I heard a lot of Seahawks fans sort of reminiscing on him and talking about him and his philosophies and stuff. It's just really good shit, and it's like it's not just the thing that I think I really love about Pete Carroll is that it's not just about being a great head coach. Like these philosophies and these things that he's teaching in people, it's about life, period. Like this dude would be a great life coach. And I watched a podcast. I watched a podcast or listened to it at work. Where it's this guy, his name's Yogi. I guess he played for USC or something, but I want to send it. I'll find it and maybe I'll have you put it up or something. But it was a really good, like 50-minute podcast with just this guy and Pete Carroll a couple months ago, and they were just talking about all this stuff. And it's interesting hearing him talk about it, and it's just, what was the main point? Like, just he teaches things that all right, this guy Yogi came into his office at one point. I don't know if it was because he was like, I want to be a coach or I want to be whatever. Oh no, he went into his office to tell him, I need to be away for a week. I'm getting married. And instead of Pete Carroll being like, okay, see you in a week, you're adjourned, get out of my office, he sat down with the guy for the next hour telling him how to be a great husband. And like in being a great husband, you have to compete. And this was the thing that stuck with me from this podcast was when he says all this stuff about competing, like it's not the way that you think. It's not about winning and losing. Just like he says, it's not about the rings. It's about competing. By definition, what is competing? And I should have fucking wrote this down. Competing is striving for greatness. That is competing. That is the commitment to excellence. That is literally what he's teaching in his philosophy. You are striving for greatness. That's all it is. Whether it's on the football field, whether it's in a math test, whether it's being a husband or being a father, this dude gets it. That's what Pete Carroll is. That's the philosophy that he's teaching. It's phenomenal. It's so simple, yet it's so effective. And we've seen how effective it is. USC won 2 championships. The Seahawks almost also won 2 championships, but they did win 1. In large part because of this.
I'm just kind of glad, and maybe it's my fault, because I'm the one who like starts the discussion all the time on this channel. But I feel like the hiring of Pete Carroll means that we can stop arguing about whether or not they should have hired Jim Harbaugh. But I bring that up because you told me that your dad would bring it up. This hire is gonna I don't think your dad's gonna bring it up anymore as long as the Raiders are as long as the Chargers don't go on to win a Super Bowl and the Raiders are still right. You just see Pete Carroll like filling up a diaper on the sideline,
Yeah. Literally, this is my last bullet point, is this next point. After his tenure with New England, Carroll looked within himself and found his philosophy. He then took 2 separate programs, USC and the Seahawks, on championship runs. I literally wrote this. Looking back a year, the Raiders had an opportunity at a coach with a similar story in Jim Harbaugh. This year, they seemingly right a wrong, and they get the right guy in the building. That's the way that I feel. And honestly, I almost, at least from the perspective of consistency, I feel better with Pete Carroll. I know it's probably, technically speaking, a shorter stint because of his age. And also, Harbaugh's a more offensive-minded guy, I think. So, there's that aspect to it, and the quarterback aspect, right? Where Harbaugh is very hands-on with the quarterback, whereas with Pete Carroll, it's more of, well, if anybody's gonna be hands-on, it's Tom Brady. I feel great about this hire, dude. I love the philosophy aspect. I love that it's not just, you know, uh, X's and O's. No offense, like a Shanahan. This isn't a
Yeah.
Shanahan hire. We got ourselves a coach, a life coach. Like, it's different.
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely agree. This rights or wrong, at least for right now. That there's still football to be played, and success to be determined at the end of the tenures and whatnot. For all we know, Jim Harbaugh can go on and become the next Kansas City Chiefs, but I don't anticipate that in the AFC.
Right.
Like I'm not even. I don't even know if Jim Harbaugh will ever win a Super Bowl, but I really like him. Pete Carroll, I don't know if he'll ever win a Super Bowl again either, but at least it's the Raiders right now have a high caliber head coach. They have a high caliber coach, and Pete Carroll has been around the game enough where, I mean, he's a defensive guy. You know who kind of understands quarterbacks? I feel like defensive minds who have been around the game for very long might know quarterbacks a little bit better than a guy like Ben Johnson. Well, Ben Johnson played quarterback, right? Ben Johnson was a quarterback, but for example, Kyle Shanahan is an offensive minded head coach, but he has the perspective of offense from his dad's scheme, which was predicated on the run, and he has the perspective from his perspective is the perspective of a wide receiver because that's what he played in college. He never played quarterback, right? So I don't think that he necessarily understands fully, the position. But Pete Carroll studies quarterbacks, and how to attack them defensively. So if he's able to watch on film what quarterbacks are able to do against a great defense, I think that he should know. And if he doesn't, he has Tom Brady and the Spytek, the guy who brought Brady, or one of the guys who was
responsible
responsible and involved in bringing Brady to the Buccaneers in the building. And Pete Carroll has been around the game for long enough to where I think that he knows people who are good quarterback evaluators. Now, whether or not they'll get an opportunity to get that quarterback is another discussion, but I have confidence in this hire more so than I did with Antonio Pierce, because that was my biggest question with him. Remember, it was all right. I was more in Team Harbaugh over Team Antonio Pierce because the Raiders need a quarterback, and I know that Jim Harbaugh knows quarterbacks. Antonio Pierce does not know.
Yep.
No offense.
Yeah.
And if he did, he wouldn't have gone with Gardner Minshew, So, what else? Another thing that stood out to me is Pete Carroll mentioned that this isn't going to be a rebuild.
Yep.
He wants to win now.
Yep.
That's good. I think that's good news.
Yeah. And I like that both. I mean, even Spytek was, seconding that of we're not coming in here. I mean, Spytek has been on record saying he doesn't believe in tanking, and I think in going hand in hand with that is he doesn't believe in accepting loss, of the roster's not that good. We're not going to be good this year. There is no such thing as that to him. It's like there was a podcast I was listening to with him as the guest, and I think they asked him about when Brady retired, you guys were kind of looking at essentially cap hell for a year or two, and you found your way to Baker Mayfield on sort of a prove it deal, what essentially like what was the thinking behind that? And it was like, yeah, we weren't going in thinking like we knew from a roster construction and cap space allocating perspective of at some point we have to pay the money. We have to bite the bullet on the cap hits, and now is the time. But that doesn't mean that we're going to suffer for it. We still have our job of putting together a good team, and Baker Mayfield was a part of that. And essentially the thought process was we're going to put the best team we can on the field, and the coaches are going to do what the coaches can do, and the players are going to do what the players can do. And they went to the playoffs 5 straight years with Baker Mayfield coming off of his Panthers and Rams season.
You mean 2 straight years?
However many years, but I'm pretty sure the stat right now is that the Buccaneers have gone to the playoffs the past 5 years.
Okay. I didn't know that you were also counting when Tom Brady,
Right. Well, but say 2 straight years, yes, with Baker Mayfield, like
With
not
Baker
expecting that at all. It was like, they are going to suck, and then and they're going to be at the bottom of the league. They're going to be drafting a quarterback next year, and now it's like, who's going to stop Baker Mayfield? We have no idea, and it was just them being competitive in making a roster that they feel can be competitive, and they did that, and they still won the division. That's the mindset that we have here, instead of like either people that are not suited to be a general manager, Mike Mayock, or a head coach, Antonio Pierce, or not being good at their jobs, Dave Ziegler, Josh McDaniels. That's not what we're dealing with anymore. We have people that are competent and people that will be competitive.
And not only that, so Pete Carroll is a very good, he's a great defensive mind in the league. He right now has weapons to work with on defense. He's got Max Crosby, who is, arguably a top 5 defensive player in the NFL. He has Christian Wilkins, who will be coming back from an injury. So it's yet to be determined, what his status will be. Robert Spillane, who's a solid option at linebacker, Trevon Merrick, and
both free agents.
Isaiah Polamau is, Spillane and Merrick or okay.
And Nate Hobbs, and technically Polamau is too, but I think he's restricted, so he's more attainable. But those are probably, after getting the coaching staff filled out, those would probably be the next, priorities, is figuring out, like, this is where the continuity with Champ Kelly matters of, hey, we should really re-sign Trevon Merrick. We should really re-sign Robert Spillane.
You know what, though? It's kind of good that they're free agents. All right. I know I was vouching for those players, but if Pete Carroll does not really care for them, he can move on from them.
Right.
But,
yeah,
if they do want to come back to the Raiders, I mean, with the familiarity and the fresh new energy of Pete Carroll, like, they can work there, especially if they keep a guy like Champ Kelly to, kind of bridge, the two parties. Yeah. But I mean, still, my point holds true for Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, and, well, I mean, the defensive line, I feel like, is.
Yeah. No, I know. Honestly, I think the guy that really belongs in that line of playmakers on defense is Trevon Merrick. I think a guy with a little bit of potential, but we haven't fully seen it yet, is Jacorian Bennett. He's under contract for 2 more years. Nate Hobbs is up there, but he's inconsistent with his health, which leads me to think maybe they let him walk or at least hit the free agent market. And the guy that we haven't mentioned is Malcolm Kuntz. He's a free agent. But yeah, that's
the Raiders have money to spend.
Day. They have the money to spend. I think Merrick is the guy that's like, you have to bring him back, and he fits so well with, like, at least previous Pete Carroll defenses,
Yeah. But on the offensive side, Brock Bowers is, one of the premium players that the Raiders need to build around. But, not just around him, they're looking to build around the quarterback. So that's good too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take a couple of these comments and then we can see where we're at, in what you want to talk about in regards to this topic, or if we want to move on. Mark Scott says, the Raiders are destined to be cellar dwellers, accept it like men. The Raiders should feel comfortable as the bottom feeders of the West Division. Swept by the Chargers. Oh my, just love it. Wow. We're already building that Seahawks-Niner rivalry with the Chargers and the Raiders. I can tell Mike is just thrilled.
Yeah. We had talked a lot about getting Tyler on the podcast, and I'm glad that we finally did. Tyler is our Charger fan friend. Clearly, he has a burner account.
Yeah. Mark Scott says, what is the difference between the Raiders and potholes? Potholes will one day be filled. Well, except if you live in certain freeways in California that they're just always there.
Yeah.
But no, that's a good one. But Mark says, enough of the raising. I love Pete.
Yeah. I was going to say,
I love that you tuned in, even though you're a Charger fan, or maybe just a Raider hater. Love that you tuned into the show. We can take it. Well, at least I can. Yeah. Look at Mike. Look at Mike's face right now. You made him frown. So it's.
I don't blame Charger fans for not liking the Raiders. It's a long history of what did Jerry Jones say? Glory holes?
Yeah.
No, but I was going to say the difference between the potholes and the Raiders is the potholes stay in Oakland.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's pretty good.
Anyways.
Frank says, Pete Carroll is younger than our last 2 or 3 presidents. Yes, a local old school coach sits fine with me and probably the other fans in my age group. I guess I was fortunate. I saw the Sea of the Hands catch at 10 years old, experience Super Bowl, is that 11?
That I don't know, but that's probably 76.
Super Bowl 11 victory at 12. Super Bowl 15, at 16, and Super Bowl. God, I'm not a Roman numeral guy, but Super Bowl 18. Yeah, Super Bowl 18 at the tender age of 19.
Wow, you might be. Don't take this the wrong way. You might be exactly the same age as my dad, because my dad, or a year older, because my dad, I think, just graduated high school when the Raiders won in '83. I want to say.
Plot twist. Frank is your dad.
There you go.
Frank says Pete Carroll has some of the qualities has some of the same qualities as Coach Flores had. I'm very happy with the decision to bring him into the Raider family.
Yeah.
The Raiders took a big step in the right direction. Hopefully Captain Kangaroo and Brady won't screw things up.
Yeah, you know what? That was a point I was going to make earlier when we were talking about Brady having a say in the quarterbacks. A big aspect to all of this is how well these guys mesh together and work together, because that's been an issue in the past for the Raiders, is like Gruden and Reggie McKenzie, and then Gruden kind of just going 100% and kind of at times seemingly bypassing Mayock, with picks. And then there's the rumor that Ziegler wanted to trade up for CJ Stroud, but McDaniels wanted Garoppolo. It's a rumor, but if that's true, it's like you're not working together, you're overruling each other. Like, if it's true what Pete Carroll said today of we are going to share the load, like we are sharing the responsibilities, we are working together. It's a relationship, as far as personnel and all that. Good. But it better work. And it sounds like Pete Carroll is very good at this, dating back to, John Schneider with the Seahawks. But the other aspect, in a way, the mystery aspect, is Tom Brady and the quarterbacks. Does Tom Brady, as part owner, walk in and say, hey, you're taking this quarterback right now in the first or second round? Because, frankly, I don't think either of the top quarterbacks, this is a little off topic, but I don't think any of the top quarterbacks are top 6 worthy, I'd rather go with a blue chip player like we got last year in Brock Bowers. I'd rather get another one of those guys to surround the team, right? And that's what these guys are talking about. And I love that sound of that. But is there this mystery element on draft day where Tom Brady's in there and says, you got to take Shadur? Sorry. When we could have got Will Johnson, a potential premier corner in the league, or a premier defensive tackle, a premier offensive lineman. I'd rather have that than a bullshit quarterback when we could just draft a quarterback in the 3rd round. I'd rather have the 3rd round quarterback that might not be as good, no shit, but it's better than forcing it, right?
Yeah.
So point being, we can't have Brady or Carroll or Spytek, putting the fist down and like, sorry, it's my way or the highway. We can't have that.
It's got to be a collective effort, collaborative, sort of decision. Man, I started cracking up because I just remembered there was a moment where, well, I don't know where I want to start with this, but so Spytek mentioned, I think he pointed at his wife, and he was like, you guys are going to know my wife, she's going to be a big part of the community. And I just started remembering what Chandler Jones accused Mark Davis of doing.
Oh God. Right.
And I'll leave it.
Story there. Well, completely reverse. Like the Chandler Jones, if you know, that was all just wild. That was peak Josh McDaniels right there. And completely out of Josh McDaniels, grip. Like, just you couldn't even ever predict that something like that would happen. That was completely a health thing for Chandler Jones, mental health. But on Spytek, he said that, and I didn't bring it up in part because I forgot to put it in the notes, but in one of those podcasts that I listened to, revolving around Spytek, he mentioned in that he and his wife had a daughter, their firstborn kid, and she unfortunately had I think he called it congenital disease, and she died within like a year or two, and it's obviously devastating. We've had stories like that in the past couple of years with players and stuff. And essentially what he
couple this year for the Niners,
like
Trent Williams and Charvarius Ward.
Yeah. And it's sad. So essentially what he was saying in the podcast, or that he was asked about in the podcast, I guess, was, coming out of that, it was like, well, we can do nothing about this, or we can do something about this. So he and his wife made a, what was it called?
Charity.
A charity, a charity. Or a private organization, or whatever you call it. But I believe it's a charity. Yeah, something like that. Revolving around that disease, right? And it's like every year they get X amount of thousands of dollars donated and stuff.
Like a foundation.
Foundation, thank you. Yep, that's exactly it. And it was just, him explaining it. It was cool. It goes in line with that, like, not necessarily competitiveness, but just like striving, like instead of just doing nothing, it was like, no, we should do something about this because too many other people don't do something about this. That was kind of their mentality on it. And obviously it comes from a place of love, which is obviously strong, but I just hearing him talk about it was really, it was a cool mindset to me. And I think that's where he was kind of coming from with, or just the way that she is in relating to like Tampa Bay. Like, I think it was similar with her in Tampa Bay of like, it's not like she, how do I say this? Like they do their part, and that's cool. So that's what he means. Obviously saying that she'll be a big part of the community and stuff is like, I don't know. It's just, you don't hear that much about GMs. You hear that about players, maybe coaches. I don't think I've ever heard about that with a GM having like foundations and like, oh, we're going to be a big part of the community. I've never heard that. It's stuck with me, anyways.
Well, I feel like John Lynch has done a good job, or at least, at first did a good job like engaging with the community. And I feel like there are other general managers who like do a good job.
I'm sure.
It's
just you don't hear about it. I guess that's my point.
Yeah, well, I mean, we live in today's society where the only news you hear is bad news. You don't ever hear good news.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Good news is never fun. Frank says that he turns 61 next month. Happy early birthday, Frank.
Yeah.
Man, I have to say, so the last time the Raiders were like consistently good, you were in your 40s. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
But you got to witness your team win not just Super Bowls, the very first Super Bowls in all of them in your franchise's history. I haven't witnessed a single one. And Mike hasn't either.
Yeah. And it's almost crazy hearing my dad sometimes. Like when my dad gets on a rant, like we were talking about the Chiefs and we're just pissed off. Like, I can't believe they did it again. God damn it. I mean, I can, but we're just pissed off about it. And, all these consistent coaching hires and cycles and yada, yada, getting our hopes up and then down and they shit and then hire a new coach and all this stuff. It's like every 2 years, I have to hear my dad say, we should have won 3 Super Bowls by now. Like since 2002 or like since the 80s. Like we shouldn't be this dog shit, poverty team. That's not what the Raiders are. Like in my dad's perspective, because he lived through it, is they're one of the greatest franchises ever, But you and me, it's like, no, they're not, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, it's like, if they had just done things the right way, they should have won multiple Super Bowls in our lifetime. But they don't. So hopefully they
it's similar. It's similar, like, Pia's dad mentions how much more Super Bowls the Niners should have won, given their history.
Right.
Well,
I'm sure Frank could tell us about the 70s, dude. The Steelers just had our number.
Yeah.